Okay guys, as we all know, the mantra of CrossFit is mechanics, consistency, and then intensity. So just because the C.A.L is for beginner and intermediate athletes does not mean we get to get away with less than perfect mechanics. We're going to start with workout one. Dusty is going to demonstrate each one of the exercises. In workout one, we'll talk you through a full range of motion, what constitutes a complete rep, and also give you some examples of what constitutes a no rep or an incomplete rep. The first exercise is burpees. So Dusty's going to show you what would constitute a rep. His body hits the floor completely at the bottom, chest and stomach coming in contact with the floor. And as you can see when he stands up, he's fully upright, clapping his hands over his head. So why don't you do a couple, Dusty? Entire frontal plane of his body is in contact with the floor. And as he stands up, he's standing all the way up so he is perpendicular to the floor, and he is clapping his hands above his head. So let's talk about what constitutes a no rep. If Dusty gets to the bottom and the entire front surface of his body is not in contact with the floor, so something like this, just do under the chest up. This would be a no rep. If he comes in contact with the floor at the bottom, but does not stand fully upright at the top like this, that also constitutes a no rep. If he does a burpee and his hands do not come above his head but remain at his sides or somewhere out in front of him, like this, this is also a no rep. All right, moving on to air squats. Full range of motion for an air squat. We'll show you what it looks like first. As you can see, Dusty comes all the way down so that the crease of his hip sits below his knee. And when he stands up, the angle of the hip is completely open, as well as the angle of the knee. So let's talk about what will constitute a no rep. If Dusty squats, but the angle of his hip crease does not come below his knee, like this, as you can see, his hip is above his knee, that is a no rep. If Dusty stands, but does not fully open his hip, and it remains closed at the hip and closed at the knee, that is also a no rep for the air squat. Let's look at the air squat from the side just to clarify the range of motion through the hip and the knee. So this would constitute a good rep. Dusty is going to squat down and the crease of the hip is going to fall below the knee. At the top of the air squat, the athlete will stand all the way, ensuring that the angle of the hip is fully open and the angle of the knee is fully open. So a no rep would look something like this. Don't come over the depth. The crease of the hip is well above the knee. Or something like this, where the athlete comes to full depth at the bottom, but at the top does not fully extend at the hip and at the knee. These would both be examples of a no rep. Moving on to butterfly or ab mat sit-ups. You're going to lay down facing either direction on the ab mat. It doesn't matter which. Dusty's going to touch the soles of his feet together. He's going to fall back and his hands will touch the mat behind him. And as he comes up, his fingertips will contact his heels, making sure they touch. That is a complete rep. Something that would constitute a no rep would be if Dusty comes back, but his hands do not touch the floor like this. That is a no rep. Or if he comes back and touches the floor behind him, but fails to touch his heel at the top, that is also a no rep. Kettlebell swings. These generated a lot of questions at regionals last year. For us, we are going to be doing an American style kettlebell swing, which means full extension at the top. The arms and the kettlebell must come overhead, which for our purposes, we define overhead as behind the arch of the foot. The kettlebell, though, does not have to be straight up and down in the air like last year's CrossFit regionals. So this would be an example of a complete rep. Do a couple. As you can see, the kettlebell is above Dusty's head. His arms are fully extended. The angle at the armpit is fully open. Things that would not constitute a complete rep are that kettlebell being anywhere other than overhead at the top. So this is a no rep, that is a no rep, no rep. You must be fully overhead. Kettlebell swing from the side. Dusty will give us a few examples of some good reps. The hip and the knee are fully extended. At the top, the kettlebell and the arms are directly above the athlete's head with the armpit fully open, arms locked out at the top. The kettlebell may sit forward of the athlete's body as long as the arms are extended fully overhead. Push-ups. These can be done from the knees or from the toes for the C.A.L's purposes. Either way, the standard will be the same for range of motion. So starting from the toes, Dusty's going to push up in a complete plank. His body is going to form a straight line from his shoulder to his heel. Everything between the shoulder and the heel must touch the ground at the same time, so come down. He's going to hand release at the bottom, and then he's going to push up so that everything comes up at the same time. A no rep would be his stomach and pelvis hitting the ground first, and then his chest. This would be a no rep. A no rep would also be not having full range of motion through the arms, and that goes either direction. So either he does not extend fully at the top and comes back down, or he starts at the top fully extended, but does not touch the bottom and hand release. This is a no rep. If you cannot do this push-up from the toes properly, the athlete will drop to their knees, and now it will be a straight line from the shoulder to the knee. The same rules apply, however. Everything between the shoulder and the knee must hit the ground together. The athlete will hand release at the bottom, and then everything must leave the ground together. So the same thing here, if the pelvis touches first and then does not come up with the rest of the body, this will also be considered a no rep for the push-up, whether it's from the knees or from the toes. So last is knees to elbow. You want to face this way. The reason knees to elbow is called knees to elbow is because your knees must strike your elbow. Not your wrist, not your armpit, not your rib cage, but your actual elbow. So Dusty will demonstrate a few good reps for us. As you can see, his knees are striking his elbow. Also at the bottom, his legs are breaking the plane of his body when they swing back. So some examples of no rep would be if the knees touch anywhere besides the elbow. So this is knees to armpit. This is a no rep. That is a no rep. The knees are not touching. They're not striking his elbows. In addition, if you do not break that plane behind the pull-up rack, behind the body, that is a no rep. So this is what we mean by that. He's striking his knees to his elbows, but from the side view, his legs are not breaking the plane, his frontal plane. They're not coming behind him. That would also be considered a no rep. Those are the movement standards for WOD 1 for the February 11th C.A.L.